Corban, what grade are you in?
I'm in 11th grade.
Okay, very good. And you have a different number, right?
Yes, 116.
116.
Liberty Street Church.
Okay, very good. And whenever you're ready.
So for the last few years here at LTC, I have done speech, and I have always tried to compare, find the subject of my speech within the theme of LTC and along with my career as a junior volunteer firefighter in my hometown of Midvale. And this year is really no exception. There's quite a lot that can be said for refuge or safety within a firefighter's career or what have you. And I'd like to talk to you today about a device we have in the fire service that I haven't had to use yet, which is really good. It's called a fire shelter. And the name itself kind of tells you a little bit about what it's for. The purpose of this device is to protect a firefighter in the event that a fire is getting too close and he can't find an escape of some sort. And essentially, it looks like a really thick sheet of tinfoil, like blanket size. It's big, so we can wrap ourselves up in it and be safe. Essentially, it's a firefighter's refuge. In reading the preparation for the Bible Bowl and LTC this year, we've been reading Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. In the book of Judges specifically, we see what my dad calls the cycle of sin. And this starts with Israel following God, trusting Him, obeying Him, worshiping Him, and then slowly but surely forgetting God, moving away from Him, starting to worship other idols. And then God gives them over to their sin, to persecution from other nations. And then Israel realizes, the sin in their ways, and they try to turn it around, and they call out to God for refuge. And He sends a redeemer or judge, rescuer, whatever you want to call it, to save them from their persecutors. And then they go back to worshiping God again, and then forgetting Him, and the cycle continues. And I think something that, if you read that, non-Christians and even Christians reading that may be kind of like, why would God do that? That doesn't sound very loving. Sounds kind of like He's abandoning them. I don't think God did. In fact, I know He didn't. Israel left, but God never did. So, parents very often, I'm sure all you parents in here will agree with me, sometimes you'll let your kid see the error in their ways. If they're trying, something they're doing wrong over and over again, you're trying to help stop, maybe you finally let them see the consequences of it. I think that's what God was doing. He was showing Israel what it's like. It's like, okay, you think you've got it figured out? Okay, I'm going to pull my hand back and let's see if you guys really know what you're doing. And, what's the purpose of that other than just showing Israel the error of their ways? I think it's the fact that God made us all with free will. And what that basically means is, for God, He doesn't want our worship, our trust, and our love if we're afraid of Him, if He's forcing us to worship, love, and trust Him. He wants it because we have chosen to. Just like with parents, you want your children to love you because they choose to. No one likes someone following them if they're afraid of you. And because of that, we see that Israel would leave God, and God would again let them have their way. And then as soon as they cried out to Him, He'd come back in and pull them close and save them again. That's because God comes after us. He never leaves us on our own. He wants to be our safe place, our refuge. Now, I don't know if I read this somewhere or someone said it to me or I somehow came up with it, but this phrase goes, no matter how far you run, you're only one step from grace. And that's because if I'm running away from God this direction and I realize what I'm doing is wrong and I turn, He's right there. Because He's been following me. Because He wants me back. Because He wants to be our refuge. That's what He wants more than anything. And just as a fire shelter, this sheet of tinfoil, can be a firefighter's refuge, our safe place, God is the refuge and safe place for all people willing to come to Him. Now, what's the refuge for us as Christians today? The Israelites had, the refuge in, sacrifice and in the law, that God gave to them. So what's ours today? Now, every Christian knows the answer to this. It's the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. It's his death on the cross, and the symbol of the cross that is our refuge. And all it takes is turning to him. Doesn't matter how far you run, doesn't matter how long, he's there waiting for you. And no matter what, the invitation to God's refuge is always open. It's not like you have to do something perfect, and then, okay, yeah, now you're. God is always holding that invitation out. He's always there with his arms open wide, so that when we come and we fall at the foot of the cross and we cry out for refuge, he'll give it to us. Very good.